What do we do now? Leafs Nation, welcome to the other side. 6,948 days, a 19-year-long playoff drought, and it was finally snapped on Saturday night. The Leafs take down the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games and advance to the second round of the playoffs. They'll face off against the Florida Panthers.
The Florida Panthers.
You gotta be kidding me. What a wild weekend since we've been able to chat with you all. And we're so excited to break it down today. We're so excited to be on the other side. And we'll take some calls periodically throughout the show. That's 416-870-1050. So throughout the show, we'll take some callers, get you to chime in on your Saturday night, where you were, your feelings, how much swagger you walked into work with today. You could proudly sport a Leaf jersey to work today without being pointed at and laughed at. Finally, Leafs Nation on the other side of being the butt of the joke in the NHL. It's the longest standing joke that you can make in NHL fandom. And today, that first round, and I know there's no curse that has been broken. The curse is 1968. That goes all the way back to the Stanley Cup. But they're over.
7, even longer.
Oh, yeah, you're right. 68 was when my dad was born. So sometimes I
He was the curse.
I say
your
he's
dad
the curse
was the
when I start
curse.
him. So it's been a long time. That curse isn't broken, but definitely the first part is.
Look, you talk about like being able to wear a jersey out to work today. I mean, I very much had to go and see what the scene was like downtown. Now that I'm back in the city, I knew there was going to be some shenanigans that was going on. So as soon as Tavares scored the overtime game winner, and after watching the celebration, the jubilation with everybody, celebrating with my roommate who I watched the game with, I looked him dead in the eyes. I was like, bro, we got to go out, man. We got to go and grab a drink, and we got to see what the scene's like out on King West. And let me tell you, there's never been a more appropriate time in the last 20 years to see a Leafs jersey being worn at every single bar on King West.
Beautiful thing. I made my boyfriend come in from Newmarket. We were celebrating his brother's birthday up there. We got to kind of take in the whole scene on the Gardner, which was a lot of fun. It was jammed, AB. Round 1 of the playoffs, there was fireworks going on. We'll have Mike Johnson on in a couple minutes to join us and chat about this, but it was jammed. And as you're parked in the Gardner, you can see all the lights. You could see fireworks coming up. You could hear the roar of the city. And you know what? Dunk on Toronto if you want around the NHL. It's been a long time since the city had anything to celebrate, and it was a significant win. Toronto deserved its moment. They deserve their moment today, too, because yesterday and today are really the only 2 days that Toronto and their fans could bask and marinate in the fact that they're going through, and then back to work tomorrow.
That's right. Round 2 starts tomorrow against Florida. So, this is really the time where Leaf fans and we can still look back on the weekend, because starting tomorrow, you flip the page to round 2, which is something that we haven't been able to do before. It's very much uncharted territory.
Yeah.
But, Julia, what I find just so fitting was that it was John Tavares, the captain, the boy who came back, who did score the overtime winner.
The boy who came back.
And, it was the big boys throughout the whole series that lifted this team and put them through. We always said it's got to be them, right? It's got to be the big boys. It's got to be Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Willie, JT, Morgan Riley. It's got to be them to get it done. And you look at who really got the job done Saturday night. Austin Matthews with an outstanding shift. Started in the defensive end, ends up winning a puck battle off of Steven Stamkos. They break into the zone, and they have a great shift, just applying tremendous pressure. And eventually, he calls his shot, Brody, with a great keep, and then gets in the puck, and he fires it into the back of the net to open up the scoring. And then in overtime, being able to, great shift by Tavares there, and eventually turns, fires, gets a fortuitous bounce, which is something the Maple Leafs just have not gotten over the course of this 19-year curse. Over the course of the last, 6 years where they've suffered first-round exits, they never got the bounce to go their way. They finally did. We talk about things feel different this year. That was different, too. The fact that they actually got the bounce to go their way, right? Going off the skate of Darren Radish, it wasn't pretty, but it ended the series and it got it done. That being said, Morgan Riley deserves a hell of a lot of credit for creating that opportunity. If he doesn't attack the net and take Darren Radish there and create the traffic in front to allow bodies like that for John Tavares to bank something off of him and go to the back of that for a garbage goal, that's probably a pretty easy save for Vasilevsky to make. But it was Morgan Riley who had the wherewithal to kind of go attack the net, bring a body there, and create that traffic. And, the The Leafs are off to round 2.
Yeah, he forced Vasi to pay attention to him there as well. We're loaded today, guys. MJ will join us right now. Arda Ocal around 105. Andy Petrillo is going to come chat about the second round for the first time, like ever, on these radio waves around 125.
Hosted the show for what, 5 years and never got to discuss a first round victory. Never got to discuss it. So we'll have her on for a few minutes and see what she got up to Saturday night. But right now, let's bring in our guy, MJ.
MJ, Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, former Maple Leaf. MJ, let's have you put on the former Maple Leaf hat for the first part of this interview. Where were you Saturday night? Walk me through the reaction to the overtime winner.
Yeah, well, listen, how long has this show been on air? Like a decade?
Yeah.
This is the first time we talk about a second-round playoff matchup. So, it's a long time coming for everyone involved with anything to do with the team. I was at home just watching on TV and just kind of rooting it along, just sort of taking it in like a fan. My kids were around, or one of my kids that likes to watch hockey with me was watching with me. And, just kind of, and then, texting with other buddies and scrolling Twitter and just kind of absorbing the whole experience. And when they got to overtime, it was hard not to feel confident. You know what I mean? Even though they'd won overtime games, it just felt hard to be confident. But, this team found a way to get some breaks and create some breaks. And I felt, people might think, given that I'm from Toronto, that I played for the Maple Leafs, that I cover the Maple Leafs, that I cheer for the Maple Leafs. Like, I don't really. There's guys I know on the team, there's people I know in the front office that I want them to be successful. That's around the league. But I cheer for people proving crappy narratives wrong. Now, maybe this narrative wasn't so wrong because it lasted for a long time, but this idea that this group of guys were somehow fatally flawed without the character, the internal strength, the mental fortitude, whatever, to win in the playoffs, or that this team that plays with skill and has 4 high-paid forwards that can never win in the playoffs, it was never right. And so for that sense, I was pumped. I'm like, because they proved people wrong that were always wrong. It just took a long time for them to show it. And in that sense, I was like, well done. Like, you know what? Quiet that noise. No more first-round jokes around the league. And for that, I felt very good for everyone involved.
I mean, when you look at who got it done, too, like, it was the big boys. And we talked about how that had to be it. And you look at the series. Austin Matthews, best playoff series of his career, 5 goals. Big one in game 6 there, obviously, 9 points. 11 points from Mitch Marner. JT with the overtime winner. Nylander, 8 points. Riley, 8 points, and some big goals in this series. Like, how important was it to get that level of production from their core guys, given that prior playoff history with these guys?
Well, it's important because that's how the team is built. Like, without it, they don't win. They'll never win if the big guys don't score. That's just the nature of how their team is built. They're not Seattle. They're not going to get 16 different goal scorers. They need to be top-heavy with their production, top-heavy in their minutes, top-heavy in their allocations, and they have to produce. And good on all of them, because everyone did. Like, I don't know, what did Marner have? 11 points. Not quiet at all, but just wasn't outrageous. But he just kind of chugged along and produced a ton. Matthews really rose as the series went along, in a series where there was not a lot of space, where the Leafs couldn't find time in the offensive zone, had a hard time breaking down the forecheck and getting it going. Austin Matthews could. He was the one guy who always could. Even William Nylander had some fits and spurts. Still, more than a point-a-game player. And they just did. And maybe most importantly to me, I mean, John Tavares' overtime goal, 5-on-5 goals. AB, you and I have talked a lot about that kind of stuff. Good for him to get those. But maybe particularly satisfying for Morgan Riley.
Yeah.
Given that he's the longest tenured player, he's the respected leader. He has worn with great maturity and kind of class the shortcomings of this group, and had a difficult year, quite frankly. Like, he just, I think the knee injury, the surgery, the coming back, he never looked quite himself. Fitness or game readiness or whatever it might be, wasn't quite himself. I thought that was as well as I've seen him play in a few years. That whole series. And maybe it's Luke Shen. Maybe it's the deployment with McCabe and Brody eating up a lot of the tough minutes. Maybe it's health. The longer you go, maybe the knee feels a little bit better. Maybe it's confidence. I don't know what it was, but really he was skating with greater freedom. He was making good plays. Yes, he produced offensively, but as you mentioned, even hanging around the offensive zone. Like, he wasn't playing scared. Not, and I don't mean scared of them physically, but scared of the moment. He wasn't shying away from the moment. It looked like he was rising to it. So I was worth noting how well he played for sure, but also kind of on a personal level, happy to see him have success because he's a centerpiece of a lot of the failures. It's great to see him be a centerpiece of the success.
Yeah, what do you think that means for the Leafs going forward, MJ? I think there was a notion, there was some nerves around Morgan Riley coming into the postseason, a thought that if the Leafs were going to be successful, he was going to have to be maybe their most impactful defenseman. And I think that he was in that first round.
And I'm surprised he was. And so what does this mean? It means that going forward, they have a defensive pair that they like in Brody and McCabe, and that pair will probably see a lot of Matthew Tkachuk and his line. And they have another pair that they really, really like. Like, flat out, Shen and Riley were awesome together in the first round. And I 100% did not see that coming. I did not think that they were going to be up to it defensively. Between the two of them, I was wrong. I was wrong. They were really good. And so now you have Giordano and somebody else, whether it's two guys, one guy, we can get into that as well. But it gives them a couple pairs to anchor what they're trying to do, that they really believe in, that are playing well, that are feeling good. And that is a good place to start from.
You know what really surprised me about Luke Shen? And especially like in Game 6, where, I thought that throughout the series, obviously, his veteran, his leadership was very evident, and the fact that he was out there chucking hits, blocking shots. I thought he was super poised with the puck in his own end. Like, that was a suffocating team that was forechecking pretty hard, and he just seemed to always make the right move to get the puck either to Riley or get the puck up to the forwards, which hasn't necessarily been his calling card, but I thought he was super poised when the game really ramped up late in that game.
Yeah, again, I'm a little surprised.
Yeah,
respectfully, I didn't know if this would be what we would see from Luke Shen in those moments. He clearly understands who he is as a player, and what he does well and what he doesn't do well. He understands, when to defer, when to play safe, when to make a play. But maybe there's something in that, he's been to the mountaintop, like he's won, right? And so there's probably a comfort. He's not carrying the baggage. Oh God, what if I make a mistake and we lose? Like, he's won. He doesn't have to worry about that. Like, of course it matters to him, but it's like, a deeper seated fear doesn't exist for him. And he made the plays. Like, sometimes he passes it out off the glass when you wish he could find somebody up the middle, but that's because he knows that he doesn't feel comfortable doing that. He just does what he feels comfortable with. But he was really good. Morgan Riley and him, the expected goal number was really big for them throughout the whole series, and I didn't see it coming, and it's been as positive a development as almost any in the first round, aside from winning.
With our TSN hockey analyst, Mike Johnson, a lot of flowers to hand out this morning. We're like three little flower girls skipping around and handing them out. We'll go to Sheldon Keefe now. He made some pretty big lineup adjustments ahead of Game 6, and if you think about from Game 1, he faced a lot of criticism for the line matching and being so intent upon that. How much credit does Sheldon Keefe deserve for the adjustments he made and maybe the way he just evolved throughout the series?
Well, I guess he deserves credit, but I guess part of me is like, that's his job, right?
True.
Like this is why he's in the NHL. If he's just going to stand pat and be stubborn, and like, that's not going to work. So in that sense, like, I'm not going to go over the board.
He had done that in the past, though, Johnny. So I think gotta give him some flowers for learning those lessons as a coach.
Learning lessons.
Well, maybe he didn't have the options available to him in the past that he would have here. Like, we could have the conversation, should Michael Bunting have played in Game 5? Because Michael Bunting was really good in the first two periods. Like beyond Austin Matthews, he might have been the best forward in the first two periods. Liljegren playing, I thought he was steady and solid. But not being too hesitant to make changes. Now, they had the luxury of the 3 games, right? So they maybe played one more with the lineup that had won, even though they hadn't played well. But he wasn't going to wait till Game 7, and he went 11-7, which he's acknowledged he doesn't love doing. But I think I had said it on Twitter, like, as far as the lineup and the way that he rolled it out, it's about as good as I could imagine a lineup looking given their current situation and their opponent. And I think he gave his team a chance to be successful. Now, it wasn't a glorious performance start to finish, but it was good enough. and he and the team found ways. So yeah, I'll give him credit, but I mean, I think this is his job, right? Like I think this is what he's there for. Sheldon Keefe has an incredible record coaching prior to the American League, prior to that in the NHL regular season. So he's a good coach. He knows what he's doing, and he behaved accordingly. He knows what he's doing, and he made good calls.
You think we see 11-7 moving forward here?
Not to start, maybe. You know what? I'd probably not to start.
Well, you're right. Based on practice lines.
Oh, we got lines?
Spoiler alert.
Oh, we got lines, right? Okay, well, because I would sit Gustafsson, keep Liljegren in, and keep Hall out is probably what they're going to do.
Oh, that's actually exactly what
Spoiler
the lines are telling
alert,
us.
Mystic Mike, he's
Lafferty.
back in action.
And
Now,
Lafferty's
the bigger question is,
taking a seat.
Now, does Bunting slide up? Does Yarncroke slide down? Like, I'm curious what happens with the forwards if Aston Reese probably Aston Reese would play if I would guess. But
yeah,
Lafferty out.
So you've got
right
Lafferty out, Bunting's with O'Reilly and Achari, Yarncroc with Tavares and Martin. So basically what we saw happen in Game 6, except you got Aston Reese back in the game, and then it's going to be Liljegren in over Gustafsson.
So that would be Kerfoot down on the fourth line with Camp.
Correct.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Versatility. We know Camp and Kerfoot can do more things. I think Bunting played well enough, and I think the stability and emotional just flat line of Ryan O'Reilly will help Michael Bunting. And Nyes is going to stay up. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense that they kind of go that way. So that's probably how I would start it, and they'll adjust from there. It's a different kind of challenge, different kind of game. Florida certainly plays physical. They play fast, but they get up and down the ice. They do not play the same kind of stifling defense that Tampa tried to play, that kind of ground and pound forechecking game that Tampa was very good at, just kind of keeping the puck in Toronto's zone. Florida gets up and down. Kachuk line certainly cycles and is very good in the offensive zone, but the other lines not quite as much. And so you might see a little bit more, not a track meet, but a little bit more open ice for both teams in the next round than you did in the first.
Well, those wingers are going to have to keep an eye on that Brandon Montour fella, because holy smokes, is he ever a player.
What a year he's had.
Oh.
What a year he has had. I mean, he'll get Norris votes. 73 points on the season.
Unreal.
If you weren't paying attention, and I get it, like there's Florida, you might not know, but Brandon Montour, Anaheim, Buffalo, and you can always tell high-end physical tools, just didn't put it all together. And this year, confidence-wise, when getting rid of Weegar, which is a right-shot defenseman, some injuries to Ekblad, the other right-shot defenseman, he plays more, he gets more, and all of a sudden now he is their number one defenseman. And you watch him play against Boston, again, a series where not a lot was going on at times, and that guy is around the play all the time. So, yeah, you better have your skating head on a swivel, skates on, because he is jumping all day long. Kachuk will be number one priority. Probably Montour is number two, even ahead of Barkov. Like, I think that's how good he's been.
Yeah, he's been excellent. I mean, Johnny, I think like last night, everyone was shocked to see Florida pull off that upset. And again, Montour, big part of it. Kachuk, big part of it, obviously. But like all around, when you watch that series, like how did Florida do it, Johnny?
Well, I think they did it by somebody asked me to make the case, albeit a thin one, how Boston could maybe be in trouble in the playoffs. And this is what I came up with 3 weeks ago. I said, well, they got a goalie who's going to win the Vezina, but he's never really played in the playoffs. So until he wins the playoffs, I guess there's that.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of played out, right? Ullmark wasn't great in the playoffs. I said they are an older team. Could injuries crop up to some of their important players? That's obviously a concern, maybe a bit more when you're older. Well, Krejci and Bergeron didn't play the first few games of the series, and Bergeron's playing with a herniated disc and was a shell of himself, unfortunately, because of the injury. That kind of played out as well. And the other part was that at 5-on-5, Florida is a good team. Like, AB, I'm sure you've looked at it analytically, shot shares, chances, expected goals. They're stronger than their record in the regular season would indicate. And so that would challenge Boston. And they were one of the top two teams in the league, I think, that beat Boston twice in the regular season along with Ottawa. So I put all that together, and unfortunately for Boston, the stuff that could have gone wrong did go wrong and ended up, making a longer series. They had no answer for Kachuk, even with the goaltending not being great for Florida, as it hasn't been all year. They were able to create enough offense. And the one guy maybe another guy on Boston's side that sort of surprised me was Hampus Lindholm, who was, again, amazing all season, was like almost jittery in the playoffs as well. So give them full credit. They found ways. It was close. It could have gone Boston's direction a half dozen times, and the series would have been over, but it did not. And Florida kept finding ways to make plays. But I'll give Florida credit because at 5-on-5, they create chances and chaos, and not many teams could do that against Boston, and they did. They're going to be a handful. This idea that somehow the Leafs have a easy path. Now, I get it. It's a 45-point difference. I'm not going to deny that, but Florida is going to be a very difficult opponent for Toronto.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what do you think this means for Boston going forward? I guess from all the embracing, the Marchand-Bergeron hug had me in my feels last night, no matter how many times the Bruins have taken down the Leafs. Like, what do you think's next?
Well, Johnny, I think you would get this because I'm pretty sure you probably watched the game, but do you remember when Aaron Rodgers and Cobb walked off? Did that not feel like that when Bergeron and Marchand had that hug and that embrace at the end of the game with the crowd?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100% it did. Yeah. I mean, what do I think is coming? I mean, I think big changes. Obviously, it's unfortunate that it sort of diminishes the greatest regular season in NHL history with the first round. You know, I mean, it kind of makes it feel sort of empty, which it shouldn't. It's an incredible accomplishment what they achieved, but you got to think Krejci unlikely to return. That Bergeron scene, who knows? I mean, he thought about retiring last year, decided to come back. Another serious injury. He is getting older. He was really good. He's obviously good enough to play, but his body is betraying him, as it does every athlete when you get to be 35, 6, 7. So I think he's going to retire. So now there's your staples down the middle that are going to be gone. They'll still be really good. They have two goalies, one of whom they could trade to supplement their center position. But it just the soul of that team is Patrice Bergeron. And to see him no longer there, it's going to be a big change for them.
Yeah, it was a shocking scene. There was major shockwaves throughout the hockey universe last night when Boston went down to Florida. But after the fact, I feel like the champs going down has been totally lost in the sauce. It's just kind of become a non-story today. So how shocked, I guess, I don't know if shocked is the right word, because the Kraken are a really good team and Colorado's beat up, but the champs going down in the first round is pretty shocking nonetheless.
Shocking if you would ask me 2 weeks ago. Not so shocking if you watch the series, right?
Fair enough, yeah.
You know, Seattle was every bit as good and not better than Colorado a lot in this series. What Colorado had was 3 world-class players that were better than anyone else on Seattle. And if McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar could drag Colorado through the first round, they were going to get there. But the rest of the roster, Seattle's is much better. The rest of the forwards, Seattle's are way stronger, deeper, more productive. And that's how it played out. Like Oliver Bjorkstrand, he could have had 7 goals last night. It could have been the greatest Game 7 of all time. I think he hit 4 posts and scored 2. So, you know, Rantanen and McKinnon did their thing. They scored 1. The other one was called back. And the big surprise, Grubauer. Grubauer has been, what would be a good word for it? Indifferent, middling in his 2 years in Seattle. Like, he's just not been very good. And he played rock solid in that series. So, surprising, of course. I had Colorado in 5 before this series began. But once you started watching, you're like, I did not give Seattle enough credit. And then, you know, the no Landeskog we heard about, the no Nichushkin, which seems like a pretty terrible situation.
Yeah.
It played out and hurt them on the ice because he would be their next best forward, right? He would be the next guy beyond Rantanen and McKinnon. And without him, it goes to Lehkonen, who's a lot better when he's your 6th best guy than your 3rd best guy. And Evan Rodriguez, who's much better when he's 8th best guy, not your 4th best guy. They just didn't have enough. They didn't have enough up front because of the absences of the roster. And it was Seattle was for full credit, but it wasn't shocking the result of last night given the way the series has gone.
Still can't believe that Seattle got Oliver Bjorkstrand for a 3rd and 4th round pick this summer. Insane.
Yeah, where's everyone else? Where is everybody else with cap space?
I remember having this conversation in the summer. It's like, that's all? Bjorkstrand's a good – he was coming off a career year, 28 goals, 57 points. Yeah. Then we got someone only gave up a 3rd and a 4th?
It might have been with me. I'm like, I don't get it. Like, where is everybody else doing? I said at the time when he went down, like, what a brilliant trade. This guy he's been my, like, all underrated team guy for, like, 3 years in a row down in Columbus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was another savvy pickup. And Seattle's fun to watch. Like, they play fast. It'll be It'd be fun to watch them go up against Dallas and try to solve Ottinger.